Welcome to this installment of the Division G webinar series. Launched in 2014 by the AERA Graduate Student Executive Committee, these conversations highlight scholarship, discuss contemporary issues, and connect DivG members with the greater educational community. Thank you all so much for joining us today. For an archive of our previous webinars, please visit the AERA Division G YouTube channel where we will be uploading this video shortly. Also, be sure to join our Facebook group, AERA Division G students, and follow us on Twitter at AERDivG. We'll be live tweeting, and our webinar is #DivG. My name is Quayling Sunshine Malone. I'm a third-year doctoral candidate at New York University, and my gender pronouns are she, her, hers.
And my name is Shannon Holder, and I'm a fourth-year doctoral student at the University of Connecticut. My preferred gender pronouns are she, her, hers.
Today, we have the pleasure of hearing from three amazing doctoral students, and they are Rishi Krishnamoorthy, who is a fifth-year candidate from New York University, great student who worked together. Sandi, Wamigwase, who is a third year from the University of Toronto and a member of the Little Traverse Band of Odawa Indians. And we also have Desa Daniel, who is a third year from the University of New Mexico and the Graduate Student Council Chair-elect for AERA. So we're really excited to have them all here today and learn from them, and I will now hand it over to Shannon.
So we'll begin today by asking our guests a few questions before we open it up to our audience. If you have a question, please type it in the Zoom chat box. Just click on the chat icon at the bottom of the screen to open it up. And we will ask your question to our guests as time allows. Our first question is for our panelists to tell us a bit about who you are, your preferred gender pronouns, and how you describe your work and research interests. Anyone can jump in.
Okay, I guess I'll start then. So my name is Desa Daniel, and I am incoming chair of the GSC. I am a third year at University of Mexico in counselor education and supervision. And most of the research that I do is around ethnic minorities in academia. So microaggressions, stereotype threats, issues for matriculations for college students, but then also mental health. So what are mental health implications? So right now we know there are a lot of tweets coming out of our White House. That is something we talk a lot about in mental health in terms of how people are reacting to the continuous stimuli that is coming through social media, and then how people respond to that, especially on a college campus.
I'll jump in and go next. I am Sandi Wamigwase, and I am a third year doctoral student at the University of Toronto. I am a member of Little Traverse Bay Bands of Odawa Indians, which is located in upper rural Michigan. So in Michigan, we like to do this whole thing where we do our geography based on our hand, because Michigan is shaped like a mitt. So like I'm from the tip of this ring finger right here. My research is about ethnic fraud, which is the instances of people claiming that they're indigenous when they're not, and kind of the impact that that has on Native student services and Native student enrollments and higher ed universities and universities. And I'm super excited to be here this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you. I am Rishi. I use they and them pronouns. Sorry, Sandi, I don't know if you said what pronouns you prefer.
I didn't. I thought about it after I stopped talking. So I use she, her, and hers.
Thank you.
Same.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm Rishi. I'm a fifth year doctoral candidate at NYU. I work closely with Quay in a lot of things. Generally, I'm very interested in relational, indigenous, and post-humanist methodologies within the context of South India. And my work really looks at classroom science teaching and the ways in which we can resist, neoliberal structures like standardization and privatization, but what that means to do, what it means to do that work using indigenous methodologies and indigenous science within the context of South India.
Thank you all for sharing that. Our next question is, what is your personal connection to Toronto?
I'll jump in first this time. I am currently living in Toronto. So as my third year, I have been in Toronto for about 2.5 years now. I grew up in Michigan and then had visited Toronto maybe a couple times, but then never stayed there to the extent that I have been here now. So this is where I'm currently living and calling home.
As for me, so I went to Toronto as a kid. My mom grew up in Michigan, so I feel like a lot of people go to Toronto a lot if they're from the Michigan area. So I love Toronto. I'm not excited about the weather since New Mexico's already 70 degrees. But I am excited. The city's amazing, and I'm excited to see the lake frozen over. And so I'm just like so excited to be in Toronto this year.
My family moved over to this area, I guess about 16, 17 years ago. And so I spent some of my youth here. I also actually now live in Toronto too. As I'm in my 5th year, I'm just hanging out here while I finish up.
Great. So we would like to know what you're looking forward to at the annual meeting and why you're going this year. And if you want to plug a session or two, this is a great time as well.
I guess I'll jump in. So as chair-elect of GSC, we have amazing programming going on for just grad students. I cannot highlight our division student reps enough. They have gone over and beyond the call to offer you programming from each and every division. And so I want to highlight that. We do have an online brochure coming out to all of you in the next few weeks that will highlight just programming for grad students. We always like the programming that has food, of course, because we're still on a student budget, but we have amazing mentorship programs. I will have a mentorship event as well that is called Links and Shoulders, which is a speed mentoring program. So you'll be able to move around to different tables and meet with different mentors throughout that programming. But then we also have our resource center. So it's a great opportunity for students to see posters of what each division is doing and what programming they have. But also if you're interested in serving in these positions, it's a great opportunity to talk to them one-on-one and just get to know us in a more informal manner.
Go ahead.
Okay. I feel like at some point you should go first.
Next time, I promise.
I am actually the grad student rep for our Indigenous Peoples of America SIG, and we're doing a pre-conference day that's happening on Thursday, April 4th. And that is what I think I'm most excited about, to be able to be involved with hosting folks in the city. And I'm also going to be presenting, and our roundtable is about the barriers that Native students face while they're in higher ed.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, I'm really, to be honest, the thing that makes me most excited about AERA is connecting with folks. I get really anxious about big spaces and many people. And so I really enjoy, last year I met a bunch of people and I'm really excited to connect with them again. I also will be sharing some work with a colleague of mine, Sarah Radke, and we're talking about statistical reasoning as social practice. But the thing that gets me excited about that is thinking about truth with a capital T, and what does truth mean, and how do we negotiate our understanding of truth when we're trying to understand someone's experience that is very different than ours.
Thank you all. Let's turn our attention now to how you prepare for AERA. Division G recently hosted a webinar on preparing to present at AERA. You can find this in our YouTube channel, and the link is going to be posted in the chat. For today, we'd like to know how to make the most of this annual meeting. Our first question is, how do you prepare for the meeting, including deciding what events to attend, professional goals you set, and your strategy to market yourself?
Is this when I said I go first?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Well, to be honest, I actually read through the whole program, and I know it takes a long time, so I skim through large parts of it. But I try to give myself the opportunity to see what everyone is bringing and to see what I'm called to. I definitely, like to write to folks who I know might be there, or who I met the year before to see if they're going to be sharing anything, and I like to make notes of it and put it in my own iCal. I don't use I think they have like a schedule planner. I don't use it. It's too complicated. And so, yeah, I do a lot of work beforehand so that when I'm at the conference, I'm not thinking about what to go to next. I've kind of already decided. I also am really conscious about not setting unrealistic goals for myself. And so I go into the conference knowing that I will be tired and that I will be maybe overwhelmed with a talk, or maybe I'll be triggered, or maybe I'm just sleepy. And so I try to also every morning, for the length of the conference, really set a realistic goal and be kind with myself about what I can accomplish. And I struggle with this about how to place myself in academia, because I don't like the idea of marketing myself because I'm not a product, but I do understand that there is capital in knowing people. And so I try to go at it thinking that I'm going to try and have really authentic connections with people. And I have found that trying to lead with my authenticity has helped me meet people who actually do research that's more aligned with the way that I imagine research to be. And so, mostly just kindness and authenticity and being realistic about what I can do. But that involves, 2 weeks or whatever of really going through and seeing what's being offered and what I could go to also then give everyone a chance for me to interact with them, because then you're not just going to the names you recognize, but actually folks who might be like struggling to have their voice heard in this space. So, yeah.
Thank you.
That was awesome. I'm not sure what else we could say. That was great. So I think I'll take a little bit different approach then. So I would say that it would depend on what year you are in your grad studies and how you're entering the space. And so as a first year, I would say go to everything you think is exciting and meet all of the people. But now as a third year, I tend to go to less programming and make more connections one-on-one, just because I'm transitioning towards graduation. So it's a little more important for me to have authentic conversations with people about what their universities are like, because I think insider knowledge is more truthful than what's on the brochure in a sense, especially as a woman of color. So I have a lot more conversations with people that I want to catch up with, or people I haven't seen in a while. I think that it's an opportunity to refill your tank in a lot of ways, and create community with people that you may only see once a year. And I think, especially speaking to what was said previously, the hardest part is more towards graduation it is marketing yourself in a different way, and coming prepared with business cards and your CV and just opportunities, and being ready. I wish it wasn't like that, because I think it's hard to be on like in the Starbucks line when you're just trying to get coffee. But the truth of the matter is, like, you may get a job opportunity in that line. So it's really thinking about, I would say, what are your ultimate goals for Toronto? If it's just to come and enjoy the space and enjoy Canada, then do that. If you're on the job market, reaching out to people, but then letting your inner circle know how we can support you, so that you do feel not so run down at the end of the day, because there's a lot going on.
To kind of bounce off a lot going on and picking sessions, one of the things that I do, because I know I'm going to be tired, is I tend to list the sessions that I feel like are super duper important to me. Like, I give them rankings and then like make different lists, and then I have like a list. If I'm not tired, then I could hit up this afterwards. But to kind of speak to those experiences that happen in the line, I find that more connections happen like in the informal spaces, or like the little bit of social spaces, than really have happened for me like right after someone's talk or right before someone's talk, because I feel like they're busy trying to prepare and like debrief with themselves, that like I find like just figuring out who they are, what they look like, and then maybe kind of approaching them later. Or one of the things that I really benefit from is my supervisor happens to know quite a few people, and so like I really rely on the relationships that she has with folks to know who it is that she would like me to meet, or like we give her lists of like who it is that we want to meet, and then she tries to definitely set that up for us. So that's really great, and it's really nice to have the support like that.
Great, thank you all for sharing that. Our next question is, what's your what recommended way of getting around the city?
It's the TTC, which is like TTC, what? It's the Toronto Transit.
Yeah. I mean, if you're in the downtown core, you can sort of just walk around most places. But yeah, we have a subway line and streetcars.
Yes.
And I think, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, and I think that the best part about that, like coming in as an outsider, is you can use one card for everything. Like you just get a little plastic card, you load money on it, and then you can tap it when you go into the stations. I've been in other cities before where it's like, oh, you need one card for the bus and a different card for the subway. So that can get really confusing. But it's just one card for everything, regardless if you're taking the bus, a subway, or a streetcar. And Google Maps is actually pretty accurate about what kind of, like your route that you would take, and will give you multiple routes if you put in that you want to use public transportation. And they also have this new thing now on the Presto where they'll let you tap, and then you can tap as many times as possible within like 2 hours, and it'll only count as one time, which is $3, which is like something new that they started in January, and I really like it a lot.
Yeah, so you can pick up the Presto card when you land if you're flying in, or at any of the major subway stations. I don't think you can buy it at bus stops, so just know that you have to go to a teller and buy it. Yeah, and everything she said.
Yeah.
And also, I use City Mapper. If I like that app a lot.
I'm not sure if it's still the same, but last summer when I was there, if you have any kind of student ID, there is a little bit of a discount. It may have changed, but just showing them my school ID got me like 10% off or whatever. It's not much, but anything helps.
Because of the way that the tap card is working now, and they are going just about paperless and only using the tap card, you would have to go to a place that would take your student ID, and like you would have to like load the discount.
Okay.
And it's a much longer process now than it has been in the past. But yeah, in the past, like that, I think that's one of the things that we lost, is being able to just like show the ID and show them like, you know, instant discount that students would have.
Yeah. Thank you for the clarification.
It's not quite as easy, but with the being able to tap as many times within 2 hours, it really helps with that. Like if you're just running to the store or have to make multiple stops, or if it's raining and it's not necessarily super good walking weather. But I would definitely bring walking shoes because it is the easiest way to get around.
All right, great. Thank you. That was
Shannon,
super
can
helpful.
I ask a follow-up question? Sorry. I'm like
That's fine.
living in the sun because it's very warm here.
Go ahead.
So in terms of walking around, is it still very snowy? Like, do we need snow boots and like parka jackets, or you're laughing because you live there, so I'm sure you're like, it's not that bad. But for the rest of us who, like, it's only snowed once this year and we didn't have school for 2 days. So for those people, what would you suggest?
I mean, the beginning of April is not, this is a hard question because we're in the thick of winter right now. Well, it's almost spring, but in the beginning of April, it's usually not that bad. It's usually not that snowy. It depends, again, on what the weather decides to do. My advice is always layers. If you're someone who doesn't spend a lot of time in the cold, you will feel cold. For us, and I'm not going to speak for you, but I assume it's similar. By the time April rolls around, like 5 degrees Celsius is awesome. Yeah, exactly. We're in t-shirts. So I assume if you come from a warmer place, you will probably be cold. So bring layers. And if it does snow, you know, the downtown has great snow removal. We don't have snow days that frequently. Like, we have good snow clearance, so you should be able to walk out fine. I would say maybe bring a pair of thicker socks and shoes that can get wet because of the slush. That way, you know, you don't need like giant boots. You'll be okay.
Thank you.
So our next question is, do you have suggestions for places to eat, sites to visit, or things to do?
So I guess I'll go since I know very little about Toronto, just downtown. So there's a lot around the convention center and most things will be open. So there's an aquarium down there and there's tons of sites. There's a couple of breweries that I like that are down there. So that area is pretty good in terms of things you want to see that are like actually down there. And everything, like with Silver is pretty walkable in terms of like getting around. And then also the Fisherman's Market. I'm not sure if that's like the right name, but that place is pretty cool and it's not too far from the convention center as well.
Is the Fisherman's Market the St. Lawrence Market, Rishi? Is that what she's talking about?
I feel like that's the only market I know down there.
Thank you.
That if you have dietary restrictions, I think Toronto's a great place to get vegan food, gluten-free things. Like there are quite a few, or if you're vegetarian, there are quite a few restaurants that will that have like those types of things on the menu. One thing that I would say is that not all bathrooms in those buildings are accessible. A lot of them are actually downstairs. So like that is like one thing to really kind of think about is like if you're in the convention center and you need to use the restroom, like that's probably the best place to do it. Yes, there are some keto options too. That you might have to like dig just a little bit more, but I think that there is actually a website called BlogTO, BLOGTO, and it has like lists of the best of like the best barbecue, the best Korean barbecue. I just really like meat and like the best vegetarian places. So like they do lists, and I think that some of it is pretty accurate. I think on those lists, some places are really super busy, but I think that it's a pretty good place to like go to. As a newbie, that's one of the things that I do. I just start checking those places out and then seeing how busy they are, or at least like looking at their menus afterwards.
Yeah, I think to be honest, I don't often eat in that area because I find it to be pricey, and it's a very like finance area, so it's not where I usually hang out. Although there are on King Street, there are a bunch of restaurants. I think a lot of them have lunch buffets, so that's something to look at. There's also a food court across the street, I think, or underneath in the path. And so that's something to check out as well. The St. Lawrence Market, and I just did this past Saturday. If you go on Saturdays, they are closed on Sunday and Monday. And so if you go on Saturday around 4 o'clock, you get really good deals because they want to get rid of all their stuff. So if you're staying at a spot where you have a kitchen, it's a great place to get fresh meat, seafood, delicious pastas, etc. And usually it's, more than half off. But yeah, otherwise I would, if you don't mind walking a little bit, it actually gets cheaper if you go east, west, or north, even just like 5 or 6 blocks.
And that was one of the things I was going to mention too, is it is pretty pricey. Like like Toronto's pricey in general, and then that area is pretty pricey, which can be where taking the subway can be really quick and easy for you. Like it's going to be busy around business times, like 8 to 9 in the morning and 4 to 6 in the evening. But between that, it's pretty easy to like get around. If you did find something that seems like really special to you, like you'll be able to get there and back pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Our next question is, how do you advise folks to engage with the local community in Toronto?
I would like to give a shout out to the Indigenous communities here in Toronto. There's this great app called First Story, and it is an app that maps out Indigenous places that are really important in Toronto. So it's kind of like, it has like a variety of things, and there are different like tours that it will take you on, and it will tell you more information about each place that you stop at. So kind of based on the amount of free time that you have, and if it's a really beautiful day, like I would really suggest taking advantage of that, because there are some really great spots and places. The other thing that I really like about in Toronto is that there is a really big Indigenous population, which also means that there's lots of artists in the area, whether you're into music or art or jewelry or artistry, like other artistry, like there's definitely those types of places. And my other favorite thing about Toronto that's Indigenous centered is that there are so many murals in the city. Like it is one of the touristy things to do, is to take pictures with the multiple murals that are located in Toronto. And there's so many. They're so beautiful.
Can you say that app again?
It's called First Story.
Yeah, I was also going to plug that app. It's great. I downloaded it a while ago and I really, really love it. So I highly recommend it. I also agree with everything that you said. There's so many murals everywhere. It's really nice to just walk through the city. One of the things that I'm sure you have too experienced, is the intense gentrification that's happening, and that has been happening for a long time. So you'll notice around the convention center, there's a ton of condos. And if you go east or west, you will see that there are many more condos coming up, and that's kind of what's been happening. So a lot of the social housing, and you know the story. So folks are really getting pushed out, and so like just kind of knowing that as you're in that space. One of the things that I really like to do with this in the background is connect with nature and connect with the land in the ways that you can, given that it's downtown. And so there's a spot called the Brickworks, and I really like it. It's not very far from the convention center. If I don't know if you'll remember this, but if you go to Broadview Station, which is on the subway line, there's a free shuttle that will take you there. And it's basically like a hiking trail and park in downtown Toronto, and it almost makes you feel like you're not in the downtown area. And they have like a lot of things about the history of the space. They do a lot of there's a community garden. They do a lot of community organizing. It is also gentrifying, but it started out really cool. There's also the other. Oh, it's called the Brickworks, Toronto Brickworks. The other spot I really like is Glad Day Bookstore. It's the oldest LGBTQ bookstore in North America, mostly because, all the others shut down, or a lot of them have. And I really like that space because it's a cafe. The food isn't great, but it's good. And there's, you can just sit there for hours and hours on end. They won't kick you out. And you can obviously read whatever you want. And in the evenings, it turns into an event space. So there's often really cool readings or people sharing their work or workshops. And I don't know what they have planned for that weekend, but usually on Friday nights and Saturday nights, it's a dance party too. So it's pretty cool to be dancing or, having a drink or, socializing with people with like a bunch of books in the background. So I really like that spot. And the other place that I also really like is the Allen Gardens. It's a greenhouse, again, downtown, and I really enjoy it because it's warm, for those of you who miss the warmth, but it's also just beautiful. You can just kind of walk through this greenhouse close enough to the downtown core, and it's just like a nice way to connect with nature again, sort of be grounded within Condo City.
Rishi, you mentioned that I was thinking the one thing about transportation again and getting around is that the easiest way to get from the airport to probably downtown is using the Union Pearson Express. And it is a train that takes you directly out of the airport. It's out of Terminal 1. So if you don't land in Terminal 1, that's the terminal you're going to want to get to. And it's called the Union Pearson Express or the Up Express. And that is the quickest way to get out of the airport without getting in a car or getting on a bus. I mean, the subway does go there, but it's an extended route. And the Union Pearson takes you from the Pearson Airport to Union Station, which is downtown near the convention center, for maybe like $12, I think. Yeah, okay. Mm-hmm. So that's really the easiest way to get in and out of the airport. And I think the whole trip between Union and Pearson takes about 30 minutes.
For those of us who are looking to, like Rishi, you mentioned the bookstore, is there maybe a website or a place that we can go visit that would have a list of maybe Indigenous spaces or business or people of color businesses that we could support like while we're there? That's like more Indigenous to Canada versus like going to Tim Hortons.
I'm sure that there is, but I can't think of something right off the top of my head. So I'd have to get back to you unless you do, unless you know, Sandy.
I feel like there's some of that information in First Story. Like, I don't think it's all necessarily super historical information, but there are 3 Indigenous restaurants, and I can tell those to you. There's a higher end one called Cookum's Kitchen, K-U-K-U-M Kitchen, Cookum Kitchen. There's another one that I eat at a lot that is inside of Kensington Market, which is called Powwow Cafe, which is Powwow Cafe. And the third one is Tea and Bannock, and that one is out of the downtown area, but like I've heard really good reviews about that one.
I've been there, it's great.
Yeah, we've had them cater quite a bit on campus.
And is there anything else we should know about Toronto that we haven't mentioned so far?
I think that the biggest thing that's going to impact your experience in Toronto is just keeping an eye on the weather before you come, like up to the couple of days before. Because if you're not prepared for that, then it's gonna like really, really suck. And I mean in the sense of like having waterproof shoes. Like I stepped in a puddle. I thought my shoes were waterproof, and they weren't until like all the water went over it, and then I had a squishy foot all day. So just like being prepared for that, and a rain jacket, like a light rain jacket and some layers will do you some good too. And I think you're gonna enjoy your time kind of here regardless. Like it's a great place to be. It's a big city that feels small. I like it.
Great. Anyone else? Are we good? Okay. It is important to note that this annual meeting, like every other, will take place on the ancestral lands, traditional territory of several Indigenous First Nations peoples. Sandi has already brought this up, as well as Rishi. And so Toronto does have a land acknowledgement that I'm going to read. And so it reads, "We acknowledge the land we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississauga of the Credit, the Anishinaabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississauga of the Credit." And so the question that goes with this land acknowledgement is, how can members of the AERA community bear this in mind as they navigate the space next month?
I think one of the important things that I've learned as being a visitor here is that there is a treaty that is signed between the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe peoples about taking care of the place here, taking care of these homelands, and it is called the Dish with One Spoon Treaty. And in that one, it talks about how the resources here are limited. Like there's a dish and there's only one spoon in it. And it's really important that you don't take more than what's necessary. It's important that you take care of your trash. It's important that you bring a reusable water bottle. It's important that you, I think one of the good ways that you can be in relationship to the land that's here is like by thanking it when you arrive and acknowledging it when you're here. I think that Rishi gave some really good resources about how to be outside or be within nature. And I think that those things are really important. I think that it is also, I think if you're coming in really with like some really warmth and kindness in yourself, and then I think that I think giving nods and giving head nods and smiling at Indigenous people when you see them, I think is going to make a big difference, because that is not something that happens every day here in Toronto.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think for me as a settler, I try to think a lot about the uses of the land and, trying to have a relationship with it versus using it as a vessel for my work. And that also is how I approach, we're at a conference, at an education conference, and understanding what that means on this land, and the values that we are reproducing, and, actually thinking of it as a settler colonial project. And so what does it mean for us to be at this conference on this land in this way? And bringing that not only just to what I feel like I want to share in that space, but also how I engage with other people in that space, and what I bring to the conversations, what I bring to the way in which I walk around. And that's kind of why I really like to then connect with the land, and, even just walk out to the lake and take a minute to be there. And then, support Indigenous businesses and like go eat, and like support them, give them a shout out, tell people.
Yeah, I can't echo that enough. I think as an American, I think we have a lot of privileges. And I think it's important to check those privileges when you land, and making sure that you're not bringing your scope of what happens in the United States as something that should happen in Canada. I just don't think that's culturally sensitive or humble in any way. And so definitely eating places that support the local community, but treating them like you are a visitor, I think is 100% where you should lean on.
Great.
There is a note about some people asking about customs, traditions, or norms that are particular to Toronto when we're here. I think that being a good kind human being is probably like the number one, but I could give you a couple of tips. Indigenous people, they really like it when you can say hello. So one of the ways in which we say hello is ani, and that is like you're at the dentist, and the knee, like the thing that's on your leg. So like ani is like one of the ways in which they say hello, or that's how you say it in Anishinaabe Moen, which is like the language of the Anishinaabe people. If they are Haudenosaunee, you can say sego, which is like say and like go. Don't laugh at me, Rishi. Trying to make it this really friendly. And
It's
then,
very accessible.
and then to say thank you in Anishinaabe one is also just to say miigwech. So like as you're leaving businesses or as you're paying your bill, just to tell someone miigwech, which is like, we spell it phonetically as Miigwech. Thank you, Elena. So yeah, those are like some of the things that I can think of that would make someone feel really good about who you are and what you're doing, and that they know that you're there supporting them.
Great. Thank you all for sharing. So our last question is actually not about the annual meeting, but our audience always appreciates knowing what books, articles, poetry, literature, or comics, graphic novels you have read recently and are reading now or are excited to read.
I am recently delving into Indigenous poetry. And so Billy Ray Belcourt wrote a book called The Words That Wound. I feel like I'm getting the title messed up, but Billy Ray Belcourt is an amazing poet. They're award-winning, and they have been to Toronto a couple times, and they know that I'm a fangirl because they see me in the audience, and then I'll go say hi, and they're like, yeah, I saw you taping me. I'm like, hi. But it's actually really, really lovely, and they're a lovely person. Someone else that I'm newly reading is another Indigenous poet, and his name is Tommy Pico. And his work is also like super great, and he is a part of a podcast that is meant for queer folk. And I think that other than those types of things, the other things that I listen to on a regular basis are actually just podcasts, like everywhere, from like a lot of, actually, honestly, like a lot of true crime, because it like takes my mind off of academia for a little while. I'm also listening to just like nerds telling me more things and more cool things. Like there's one called This Podcast Will Kill You, which is all about infectious diseases, which is something I know absolutely nothing about, but I like listening to it because I'm learning something. And then I tell other people about how measles are spread. And then there's another one that I really like that is, I lost it when I told you the measles comment. I'm sorry. So like the things that I look for, and they have happened in Toronto a couple times, and like I really just look for places and spaces that make me laugh. So I'm looking for the podcasts that make me laugh to take some of the stress off. One of the things that I think that Toronto also has, I would add, is like a really like a decent like comedy scene. And those places are always really fun as well because we're making fun of Southern colonialism.
That was really great. I also love Billy Ray Belcourt. I think it's called This Wound is a World or something. Yeah, something like that. Anyway, they have a really, really great interview on CBC Radio as well, in case you're wanting to hear it. They're quite brilliant. Speaking of which, if you are a person that likes to listen to radio, I really love CBC, which is our radio station. I think it's the government radio station. They have a show called Unreserved that I really enjoy, and they also have lots of comedy, so I highly recommend them. I am currently in between books. I really enjoyed, I don't know if you know the Akata Witch series. There's 2 of them. It's great. I highly recommend it. I think it's aimed at like preteens or teens, and it's science fiction-y. Someone described it as the Nigerian Harry Potter, and I hate that description because it's so much better. And so I highly recommend it. It's 2 books. You will wish that there was a third out there. And the next book I want to read is, I just heard about this book called Freshwater. I think that's what it's called. It's written by a non-binary person from Brooklyn. And I think it's similarly set in Nigeria, and the person moves to the US. And anyway, it sounds really good. And then the third book that I didn't think I was going to plug, but I will. There's a science fiction-y, I think she's science fiction. Anyway, her name is Nalo Hopkinson. Maybe some of you know her. She wrote this book called Brown Girl in the Ring, and it's set in post-apocalyptic Toronto. And it's one of the best books I've ever read. So I highly recommend it.
So I will also, Sandy, I love a good crime podcast. So 100% right there with you. I also, Meathead Hippie is a great podcast as well. It covers a lot of nutrition and like stress, and I'm a counselor, right? So I'm all about like how things are affecting your body and how you process through that stuff. But then also Justin Asura, he has a podcast that's geared towards sports psychology, but there's just a ton of motivational stuff in there and about habits and things like that. In terms of books, Dare to Lead by Brene Brown, huge fan of her overall. I'm really excited to read Michelle Obama's book, so I'm hoping that I'll read that one next. And then The Body Keeps Score is about how trauma affects your body overall and how you process through sleep and adrenal fatigue, and it's super sciencey and kind of academic, I guess I would say, but I think those would probably be like my main go-tos right now.
All right, so thank you all for telling us about your work and about Toronto. Now the floor is going to be open to questions from the audience.
All right, so thank you again. As Shannon said, this has been such amazing information. And shout out to Eliana. She's been killing it on the chat box, responding to some of your logistical questions. So be sure to look there too if you haven't already, and to our hosts to our panelists who are also kind of answering certain questions as they were going along. But some questions did slip by, so we want to make sure we get to them. This question is from Eileen. It's my first time at AERA. I am presenting 2 papers, and I am a member of 3 divisions and a bunch of SIGs. Go ahead, Eileen. What lessons learned can you offer a first timer in terms of balancing getting the most out of it and not being overloaded? What do you all think about that?
So as someone who's also high functioning and probably does way too much, I would say that you can have it all, but not all at the same time. So really prioritizing what is most important to you, and then making sure, like Rishi and Sandy said as well, like making sure that you don't feel exhausted at the end of the day and you are taking care of yourself, just because there's still other conferences and there's always more opportunities.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. This is something I wanted to say before I forgot. If you really want to engage with someone, a round table is great because you actually end up sitting at a table with them and having a conversation. So like Sandy was saying, like prioritize what you really, really want to go to for sure, and who you want to speak with or build a relationship with, and then see if they have a round table, because that's a great way to really engage with their ideas in them.
I think that the online platform of being able to search with like anybody's name or any subject area is really like one of the best places to start when you're trying to figure out what sessions you're going to go to, or because you can really quickly just type in people that you're reading or you're currently reading or you're going to read, people that are next on your list, and find out if they're presenting at AERA, if what they're presenting. I think that was probably the most helpful thing to me that happened last year. And also you're going to get like information and lists from different SIGs that you belong to about where they're presenting and who's presenting with them. So I think that I think it's just really important that you prioritize what it is that you're looking for. And like both my colleagues said, like just think that it's important that you are also taking time for yourself. Like make sure that you're scheduling in time for lunch and time for dinner, because if you really outdo yourself, then you're going to not be able to capitalize on the other days of the conference.
This is true, and thankfully you all provided us with tons of information about, you know, going to murals, eating good food. So anyone else want to comment on that before we move on? Okay, our next question, sort of similar, but from Angelica, and she asks, are there any must-dos during the conference? Any must-dos?
I would love to see everyone at our social, just because I think it's a good way to connect with other grad students. But I think that would maybe be the only thing that I would say is a must-do for like everyone. I think people probably have their own unique must-dos depending on your division and kind of your goals for the conference.
Christina just asked, when is it? I'm not sure if she meant the social.
She could. I actually don't know.
And I mean, I would check the program for the
Just being honest, y'all, it's about to be spring break here. So.
Okay, Eliana's got it. This is
okay. See, thank you, Eliana.
Thanks,
I
Eliana.
use my life every day.
But there's plenty of those in the division ones too. But
yes, yeah.
One of the things that I really enjoyed last time was the receptions that each, I guess, like university throws. They're dope. There's free drinks and food. And so, and I mean, of course, yes, socialize. But after a long day, it's really nice to be offered a free wine or free food or water, pop, whatever you want.
And Rishi, do you have to be a member or have and be an alum or attendee of that university to go to the reception?
No. Not that I know of. Nobody asked me if I was, and I went to several.
That's another way to meet people.
Hello.
You know, hey, I know you went to the University of Michigan, so I'm going to come to
Yes. Teachers College has an amazing social. Like, so I'm not sure if you do have to be an alum, but just make a friend. But that's a good one to go to.
Or just say you left your ID.
Yeah.
No one's IDing you at the door.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't, just go.
Is recorded, just remind me.
Other must-dos at AERA.
I think I just want to say, like, to really highlight what Rishi and Sandi have said already, I know that conferences are expensive and there's a lot going on in terms of sessions and things like that, but I really hope you all get outside. Like, I know I'm going to be cold, but like, enjoy Toronto. It's a fantastic city overall. I love it there. And I know that we all have pressures from like advisors or expectations or whatever going on, but carving out space to like enjoy where you're at is also what conferencing should be about. And so if you make the trek all the way to Canada and don't like see a mural, then I think you may regret it in some sense, like in the future.
Excellent advice. And also I just want to point out that Eliana is plugging Michigan State's reception, which I try to count as well, even though I went to U of M. Okay, anyways. Oh, there's one more question. So this is from, I'm not sure if I'm going to say your name right, Akash. The program schedule is overwhelming. Any guidelines on sailing through? I do remember Rishi talking about how they read the whole entire program. And I think that they should write a Cliff Notes version. I want to respond to that before we start to wrap up.
Sandi already said it, but like searching the program for people you want to talk to or see, I highly recommend roundtables over a lot of other events, especially if they're by very popular scholars, just because they're going to be full, right? So, and really like, I know I've said this a lot, which is very counselor-y, but like, what are your goals for the conference? So like, if your goal is to really connect one-on-one, like in an authentic way, then I would cut down on how many things you want to go to and maybe create some time to have conversation in hallways and get coffee. If your goal is to be on the job market, then really focus on going to things that schools are supporting or like scholars from those universities are talking at. That's really a good inside insider view in terms of that. And then Toronto's expensive and being a student's expensive, so go to all the free things with all the free food. So I would say like start there and then add some other stuff.
From the GSC chair-elect herself, I hope everybody is also. I think that's the end of our Q&A sessions. I don't see any others. So thank you again, and I will hand it to Shannon to wrap up our session and plug our DivG events at AERA.
Great. So thank you, everybody. Thanks especially to our participating scholars and to all of you for engaging in the conversation. We're all looking forward to seeing you at the annual meeting starting on April 5th. So we do have a few announcements. There are several Division G sponsored events taking place during the annual meeting, all in the Metro Toronto Convention Center. For folks who pre-registered, the pre-conference mentoring session will take place Friday, April 5th from 7:30 to 11:55 a.m. in MTCC room 701A. The Division G business meeting is open to all members and will be held Sunday, April 7th at 7:05 p.m. in MTCC room 801A, followed by the combined Division G and K reception at 8:40 in room 718A. And I believe Eliana posted that in the chat box. The fireside chat is open to everyone and takes place Monday, April 8th from 12:20 to 1:50 p.m. And that's also in the MTCC room 701A. And finally, the student session will be on Monday, April 8th from 4:10 to 6:10 p.m. in MTCC room 716A. So unless I missed anything, we really want to thank you all for supporting this AERA Division G webinar. We'll see some of you in Toronto, and until next time, goodbye and thank you.